Good evening. I'm Robin Santiago, a lifetime West Hartford resident and a retired dentist.
Hi, and I am Carrie Rausch, also a longtime West Hartford resident and co-founder of Grassroots Jewish Women of Greater Hartford.
We share a deep concern about the rise of Jew hatred we are seeing here in our beloved community and around the world. Together, we have this important opportunity to share our concerns and the facts behind them with you. Join us for this series, Shadows of Intolerance, Local and Global Perspectives on Anti-Semitism. We are delighted to be working with the Department of Equity Advancement and the town's very own TV channel to bring you this program series to discuss the rise in Jew hatred that has escalated alarmingly since October 7th.
This week, we'd like to introduce our special guest, Dr. Daniel Weiner. He is Vice President for Global Affairs, Professor of Geography. Daniel Weiner, Ph.D., joined the University of Connecticut in 2012. He is currently Vice President for Global Affairs and a Professor of Geography. Dr. Weiner is a development geographer with 3 degrees in geography from Clark University. His expertise is in Eastern Southern Africa, Appalachia, and the Middle East. He is also a specialist in theory and practice of participatory geographic information systems. In his role as Vice President, Dr. Weiner is in charge of building out UCONN's global footprint, which includes Israel. He is also the founder of UCONN Abrahamic Programs and is currently establishing the Laboratory for the Study and Prevention of Global Anti-Semitism. He is also working with colleagues throughout the state to launch a Connecticut-Israel business exchange. Dr. Weiner recently returned from 2 weeks in Israel and the United Arab Emirates. We're delighted to have him with us today.
Dan, tell us more about your recent experiences in the Middle East. What were your observations?
Well, first, thank you for having me tonight, and thank you for your leadership in the community, both of you. It's noticed that it's very, very important. I visited Israel and I visited the United Arab Emirates in Abu Dhabi, and in Israel I was able to visit most of our partners. Went up north to the University of Haifa and the Technion, and went south a little bit to Ben Gurion University in Beersheba, and met with our partners at Tel Aviv University and some of our NGOs. So it was a really interesting trip, and I have lots of observations. I'll be very brief for Israel piece, and we can talk about the UAE a bit later. I mean, everybody understands that this is a deeply traumatized country, and you can feel it, you can see it for all the reasons we know. We don't need to talk more about that, but it's going to take a long time, a generation, to really resolve and work through some of the trauma. And we all know there's also a lot of political tension. It's a very divided country. There's a lot of passion. People are very opinionated about how they feel about politics. So it's a very divided society. There's also a lot of concern in universities around the de facto BDS, where they're seeing, particularly in Europe, their partners are disappearing, and they're concerned about funding from the EU and from Europe. So they were very appreciative that UCONN has leaned in during this very difficult period. We've not run away from Israel, we're actually leaning into Israel. And we're proud of that. We're proud of our relationships with Israel. But there's another thing going on which is remarkable, resiliency. I mean, we all know that Israel is just a very strong, resilient society with very strong communities. So even though it's fragmented, you really feel just the community and the resiliency and the strength of this remarkable country. It's forward-looking, and it's just, it's inspiring, actually. It gave me energy when I was there. And there's literally people moving into the country. I mean, you have out-migration, you have in-migration. You hear French on the streets of Jerusalem now, which we didn't hear before, as the French leave various parts of France. So the resiliency was quite remarkable. And I think the young people in Israel are going to be their greatest generation. We had our greatest generation in World War II, and I'm not sure if the timing is interesting as our greatest generation passes, the World War II generation, my parents' generation, these young people in Israel, for lots of really difficult reasons, are strong and resilient. You can feel it. You can feel the energy with the young people. They're strong. And so this is a country that's been thoroughly traumatized through all kinds of reasons we're all aware of, but is extremely strong and resilient. And the other thing I want to say for this interview here is, the pride of Zionism. The flag is everywhere. And I think, there's something we can learn from them, where we kind of tiptoe around the flag in the United States. We don't know how to handle the Zionist, anti-Zionist conversation. My opinion is anti-Zionism is the new anti-Semitism, and that's a conversation for maybe later. The other thing that is one of my main conclusions for this trip is that, yes, the right wing is growing on both sides. Yes, there's conflict. Yes, it could metastasize again. But inside Israel, there are these remarkable spaces of coexistence where Arabs, Jews, Muslims, and Christians coexist. Now, I don't want to romanticize the relationship between Arabs and Jews in Israel, and I don't want to romanticize the relationship between Jews, Christians, and Muslims. Lots of issues. But you go to a hospital, Arab doctors. You go to a pharmacist, Arab pharmacists. You go to the university. Hebrew University is 20% Arab. Haifa University is 40% Arab. Tel Aviv University is, third, maybe a little less Arab. It's remarkable. So Arabs are now taking advantage of some of the best higher education in the world, and that's a game changer, actually. And that's something I observed in East Jerusalem when I visited a group called Genovate, a Palestinian startup company. And this guy who showed me around, a lovely person, has 2 children in Hebrew University.
Wow.
And he was so happy. I mean, these are people who, they're not, part of the Oslo Accords, and they're not West Bank folks, they're not Gaza folks, they're not citizens of Israel, they're residents of Israel, and they can take advantage of higher education in Israel, and they are doing that, and the Israeli government actually is subsidizing them and actually creating training programs. So a lot of criticism from different camps of the Israeli government, but they've actually done a really good job bringing Arabs into the higher education sector, and I think the benefits of that are going to be tremendous. Finally, I think most Israelis understand the war is not over, and they want it to be over, but part of the Israeli psyche is you understand that you don't know what's going to happen tomorrow, and you have to prepare for it. You don't obsess in it, but this, for lots of reasons, including the Iranian situation, I think there's an understanding that it might not be over.
Mm-hmm. You also told us that the Arabs, citizens in East Jerusalem, or the Arab residents of East Jerusalem, also benefit from the Israeli healthcare system.
Correct. So that's what makes East Jerusalem so interesting, is that there's 450,000 people. As I said, they are residents of Israel and not citizens of Israel, but they have access to Israeli healthcare and they have access to Israeli education. And one of the things I was told on this trip is that they're now choosing to develop curriculum in their secondary schools that allows them easier access to Israeli institutions of higher education. Because at the end of the day, these folks, I'm sure they have their grievances and there's all kinds of political issues. We all understand Jerusalem is a complicated place. But they also see that they can benefit from it, and they're taking advantage of it, and it's actually quite remarkable. And that's a piece of the story of Israel that people don't know. That, there's all kinds of opinions on Israel. You put 10 Jews in a room, you get 14 strong opinions. But the coexistence that takes place in Israel is actually quite inspiring. And again, don't want to romanticize the situation, but I do think it's important to understand that Jews, Christians, and Muslims in lots of pieces of Israel are actually coexisting.
So you also said that you went to the United Arab Emirates.
Yeah, we developed our UCONN Abrahamic programs in 2016, and that was 4 years before the Abraham Accords. And the idea was that Israel can be sort of a safe space, UCONN could be like a safe space to bring Israelis together with their neighbors. And it's been very effective. It's been very, very inspiring. So we're part of a group that organized a conference, a small conference with Tel Aviv University, the Moshe Dayan Center, to celebrate 5 years of the Abraham Accords. And I think, UCONN is a major player in that space. We're the leading Abrahamic institution in the world, and we're very proud of that.
Wow.
And more importantly is the Abraham Accords have gotten through a stress test. I mean, October 7th and the war and the multi-front war has put a real stress on the Abraham Accords, but the UAE is in the program, Morocco is in the program, and Bahrain is still there. And I think it's quite important. 10% of all the traffic I read from Israel out is to the UAE. They're just everyday flights. Mm-hmm. And I took that flight. It's the second time I've done that. I've gone to the UAE through Ben Gurion Airport. It's just packed with Israeli tourists going to Dubai and going to Abu Dhabi, and some folks from the UAE coming into Israel. So I think they've passed the stress test. It's very difficult right now, and hopefully with the ceasefire, and let's hope for the end of the war in Gaza, you can see more countries, because obviously Saudi Arabia is the very important piece of this. If and when the Saudis decide to join the Abraham Accords, that's a very big deal.
Can you tell us more about UCONN's work with the Abrahamic Accords?
So we have 3 different focus areas. One is on history and culture. Another one's on environmental change, and a third one is on innovation and entrepreneurship. And we had a conference in 2016 to kick off the UCONN Abrahamic programs, and it was historical for obvious reasons. You just want to start with things that are less politically charged. And it was on the sort of Al-Andalus period when Jews and Christians and Muslims coexisted. Again, don't want to romanticize the past. Yeah. There's always people want to rewrite history as if everybody just was.
So that would be
kumbaya.
Spain.
This was Spain and Morocco. And at dinner, we had a professor from Morocco, from Al Quain University, who actually teaches Hebrew to imams in Morocco.
Oh, wow.
Because their attitude is you need to know the Old Testament, and you need to look at some of the original texts, some of the old texts, which was very powerful. He didn't speak English. So at the table, we had another person from Haifa, University of Haifa. Our guests from Morocco and our guests from Israel were talking in Hebrew. And I just sat there with a smile on my face. I'm like, that's what we want to do. And it was beautiful. It was absolutely beautiful. And then we had a workshop in Rhodes, Greece, on environmental change. And again, we brought folks from throughout the region. We brought Israelis. And, one needs to understand that for people in the Arab world and for people in Israel, there was little, if no, interaction. 2 ships passing in the night. And again, there was this magic, this feeling of relief, this feeling like, I don't have to hate you. This feeling like, well, we can do this differently. I'll just give you one story. There was a woman from the Gulf. She was a marine biologist, and she was planning on coming and represent her NGO. And she emailed me 2 days before the conference saying, my boss told me I can't go. And she didn't tell me why, but I knew that it was because the boss saw that Israel was there. So she was like really upset. I said, just come. Just come as a marine biologist and as a human being. And she came, and then the first lunch, she pulled me aside after lunch, and she was literally almost in tears, just saying, thank you. She said, I grew up learning to hate Jews. I grew up learning to hate Israelis. But in my heart, I always felt like something was not right there. And now I know my heart was right. So again, another personal experience, where you realize that we're on the right side of history. I tell my students the politics of hate are a really bad economic development strategy, because it just people and countries and parties that hate, it ends bad. And we all understand that. It could be fascist, it could be authoritarian, it could be all kinds of things. So our work is trying to build peaceful coexistence and regional integration. Because at the end of the day, there is no resolution to the Israel-Palestine conflict that doesn't involve regional integration. The Jews aren't going anywhere, Arabs aren't going anywhere, Palestinians aren't going anywhere. They live on top of each other. They need to figure out how to live together. Now, obviously, it's easy for me to say that. How to get there, that's another conversation. But a lot of people in the region, they understand that. My Palestinian friends that I work with, they feel like the anti-normalization stuff is just a political slogan. And at the end of the day, everybody needs each other. So we're very proud of the work we do. And the third area is on innovation entrepreneurship. And that third area is named after our late Senator Joe Lieberman. And we got him involved as his legacy project. And obviously he was very dedicated to Israel, has a daughter in Israel, grandchildren, also very involved with the Abraham Accords. So this was a perfect program for UCONN to get involved with. He helped develop the program. We spent 2 good years with him, which was one of the privileges of my professional life, to get to know the senator. He was a beautiful person. He passed, but we continued to do the work. So last summer, we were starting to plan some activities, and there's a war going on. I was thinking it was a year, 15 months ago, like, how are we going to do this? How are we going to bring people from Israel and from Jordan and from Bahrain and from Palestinian territories and Morocco and UAE in this war? And then I said to myself, we just got to do it. And we had raised the money, so we brought a group to Stanford for about 3 days in October, 13 months ago, and we did it quietly. We didn't tell anybody. We had people that came that literally risked their lives to be seen with Israelis. We didn't want demonstrations, so we just did it, and it was magic. It was absolute magic. So we decided to do some programming, and we did a hackathon in May, 27 hours. We had 45 young students, Israelis, Palestinians, Bahrainis, UAE, Morocco, from the region. They developed companies to improve water consumption.
Oh, wow.
And
big problem in the area.
Yeah, and the winner developed an AI system for consumers to choose the best company for them, and it was a Moroccan, a Bahraini, and an Israeli team. And that was really powerful. And then we had a course called Entrepreneurship Through an Abrahamic Lens, where entrepreneurship is not just starting a company, it's a way of thinking. So we did 6 weeks, and it was really, really good and really powerful.
And this was at UCONN?
We did it virtually because people can't travel.
Right.
And this was all during the war. In the 5th session, which was organized by Ben Gurion University, they actually had to run out of the class for 25 minutes because Iranian missiles were coming. And that was in class.
It home.
That was in class. And there was a moment, I'm telling a lot of personal stories because I think it helps to see what we're doing here. The 6th class, the students had their presentations, and there was a little time beforehand. And one of the mature Israeli students from Ben Gurion University talked in Arabic to one of the folks from Morocco, and he just said, "How do you know Arabic?" He says, "Well, my daughter's teaching me Arabic." And there was like, I looked at the screen, and we had Syrians on the screen, literally. Like, I don't get it. Israelis, Jews speak Arabic? And they had no idea. And yeah, my daughter's learning Arabic in school, and you used to see their faces. So just these little moments,
right?
Just these, we're in a period of dehumanization on all sides, and it's a problem. And so I've been talking about rehumanization.
Right.
And again, we're just little old UConn, basketball capital of the world, but we are bringing people together, and we are rehumanizing people, and we're showing another pathway. And the innovation entrepreneurship piece is critical because it's peace building through business. We're also building an Abrahamic hub. I'm working with some folks at the Technion who are building this platform. And the idea, why shouldn't an entrepreneur in Riyadh get advice from, a business person in Tel Aviv, or why can't a student in Tel Aviv get advice from a venture capital person in Rabat? Open up that space so that university-based innovation entrepreneurship can be connected. We're working on that. And so we just take it one day, 1 week at a time. But I think the main lesson from the UCONN work is that there's a hunger. There's a hunger for a different way of existing. Having said that, I'm not going to suggest that all is well in the region. You look at public opinion, you look at, anti-Israel opinion on the so-called street. There's big issues there. But I think we underestimate how much ordinary people really want to get on with another way of coexisting.
I think you mentioned how the politics of hate are not beneficial for countries or companies, but they're also not beneficial for individuals.
No. I mean, hate is corrosive, and it sells. I remember when I was doing work on small farms in Africa, and I pitched a book on successful small African farming, and the publisher said, "No, that won't sell." I said, "Well," I just kind of joked. I said, "Would you like me to write a book on genocide?" He said, "That would sell." And it just stunned me. So here's like a success story of, this was Zimbabwe, and they didn't want to hear about it. But if you want to talk about war, and we'll publish that. So hate is an industry, and it's in social media, it's everywhere. But our personal experiences with the Abrahamic work is joy, where literally people are just joyful. They were dancing in Greece together. They were just so happy to have this opportunity to do something different. And I must say, the UAE is a remarkable country. I heard some of the leaders speak. They're very, very courageous, and ideologically they're leading the region on a new. They have an Abrahamic house, which I've been to a couple of times.
Yeah.
I have so much respect for the UAE, and for Morocco, it's complicated, but they understand fully that Jewish civilization, a piece of it comes out of Morocco, and it's still a piece of Morocco. So it's baked in the cake in Morocco. So Morocco and UAE, they're good partners and courageous for what they've done. I have a lot of respect.
It's wonderful to hear that.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
This has been very inspiring. And I also want to compliment UCONN on a recent award, honor. I know that Stop Anti-Semitism evaluated some 90 universities, and they only gave 15 universities, of which UCONN got an A in protecting their Jewish students and creating a healthy living and learning environment. And I'm sure that many of the programs and the atmosphere that you've helped create have contributed to this feeling of community at UCONN. So,
congratulations.
Yes.
Well, thank you. We're very proud that UCONN has become a place where Jewish students and Jewish parents and the Jewish community feel like they can send their student. That's paramount. That's for anybody. Nobody should feel like they can't come to UCONN because they have to face discrimination or hate. That's completely unacceptable. And obviously, anti-Semitism is metastasizing in our society, and higher education, sadly, is a piece of that. I think it starts with leadership. President Marek, who's just not just brilliant, but courageous. Where she just was like, no, we're not tolerating certain things. It's just not going to let it happen. And I think that was part of it. But we all came together. The leadership team came together, and we met all the time. We established a weekly group that still meets, a campus climate committee. We fixed some policies. We fixed some of the bias reporting. We understand that middle management needs to be in the program. So we're constantly evaluating what's not working. because you never declare victory with anti-Semitism. You have a good day, you have a good week, but you know that the next day, the next week, something unfortunate could happen.
Yeah.
But I'm very proud to be part of that team. And the other thing we did is we spent a lot of time talking to students. We're just listening, and I think they needed that. Yeah.
Well, that's a great example for other universities to follow. So you've really contributed in so many ways, not only to UCONN and our state, but also to making the world a more joyful, human place where people can be heard and understood and feel seen and validated.
Well, I appreciate that, and it's an honor for me to be a vice president at University of Connecticut, and just amazing colleagues, fantastic leadership, wonderful students, and in our own little humble way, we want to provide some leadership. And so I think this new laboratory for the study and prevention of global anti-Semitism is part of that. The Abrahamic programs we're already doing. We're about to launch the Connecticut-Israel Business Exchange. There's a lot there. So we feel like we can do some special things. We have some good donor support. We have support from the state. We have support from the administration. And we're just glad that we could make some impact.
Well, very proud to be associated with you, yes.
And thank you for sharing this with us. It was very insightful.
Yeah.
I will say one more thing, which as a segue, since there's a big game at the Excel Center today, is that UConn basketball has an Israeli slice to it. And when I go to Israel, they often want to talk about basketball. The Dov Hannafeld, 1989, and Jerome Sheffer, 92, 93. So it's kind of interesting how Israel and basketball are connected, and that makes it even more fun.
Yes.
Because it's always
adding to the joy.
Always willing to talk about UConn basketball.
That's great.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for inviting me today.
Well, it was a pleasure having you,
pleasure.
And we're really very proud of UConn's reputation as being a welcoming place for all.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.